Good afternoon. We're recording on eSkype and ready to go.
Thanks. All right, it is 1 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Councilwoman West is unable to be here today. She sends her apologies, but is doing some pretty cool FFA parenting stuff. So she asked me to fill in for her again this week. Ria, would you put up the screen for the ability for people to participate? All right, as you can see, we are meeting virtually still in committees. You can go to the city website and find the meeting you want to comment on, click open for comments, or you can call the city voicemail at 406-552-6012, or email the city council at the council email address. If you are in the audience, you can just raise your hand and we will recognize you. All right, thank you so much, Ria. And then would you go ahead and do a roll call?
Anderson,
Present.
Becerra. Absent. Carlino,
Present.
Contos,
He's out this week.
Hess,
Present.
Jones,
Present.
Jordan,
Present.
Nugent,
Present.
Savage,
Present.
Cheryl,
Present.
Basika,
Present.
Heidi is absent. All right, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. We do not have minutes to approve this week. They're not quite ready. So at the next scheduled committee meeting for the Housing Redevelopment Community Programs Committee, those will be approved. Any public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our first item of business, item 3.1, which is reviewing the contract for the Reaching Home 10-year plan evaluation. And I'm going to ask, well, I was going to ask, oh, there she is, Miss Armstrong to join us and discuss this item.
Yeah, thank you. Can we also promote Brandon Green and Susanna Powell from the attendees list? They're presenters with me, and I want to make sure they have panelist and screen sharing access.
Doing it right now.
Fabulous, thank you. Great, so I will be presenting with Brandon and Susanna, and they are part of the JG Research and Evaluation team. So this item is for the Reaching Home 10-year plan to end homelessness evaluation. So Brandon, if you want to just go to the first slide, perfect. So the 10-year plan to end homelessness was created in 2011, 2012, it really launched in 2012. And so as we hit 2022, we've kind of reached, or we really have reached the 10-year lifespan of this plan. So we are planning to do an evaluation project to really do some reflection, assess successes, challenges, gaps, and really look at where things need to shift as the housing landscape today looks quite different than it did 10 years ago. And also really look at, the goals that were outlined in that plan and what we've been able to make notable progress on, and what we still have work to do on, and what maybe we need to completely rethink or restructure as we have different partners in the room and different challenges at play in our community today. So I'm going to skip the third bullet and then come back to it. The Reaching Home team, city staff, did a limited solicitation process to find an evaluator for this project. We reached out to 11 firms across the country. Some were local, some were regional, and some were national, but a variety of firms that had experience in either really skilled experience in evaluation, creating evaluations, executing data collection and creating analysis, or experience particularly in housing or houselessness evaluation or programming. And from those 11, we received 3 complete proposals. And from those 3, we selected JG Research and Evaluation as the most qualified. They are a local partner. They're in Montana, and that's a huge asset when we're hoping to do a lot of our data collection in person, in focus groups and interviews and in-person meeting formats. So we're really excited with the proposal they're created, and much of this presentation will actually be them kind of talking through their proposal, but I wanted to do the upfront just overview and framing of the project itself. As far as funding, this will take $42,000, which was approved in the fiscal year 22 budget cycle, and that's coming from fund balance. And then we also have a really fabulous partnership with the United Way of Missoula County, and have worked with them to secure a few different grants over the course of the last year. And in one of those grants, we wrote in funding for compensation for people with lived expertise of houselessness. And so they'll be providing that portion of funding towards this project for folks who participate in focus groups and interviews and such to share their experiences and their expertise. So from there, I think I'll hand it over to Brandon and whoever else from your team is going to chat.
Great. Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. We are JG Research and Evaluation. We're an applied social science firm based in Bozeman. For this project, I'll be the project director. And then we have two project managers, Susanna Powell, who's able to join us, and Erica Berglund. Erica lives in Missoula. She works remotely for us, and is sort of nice to have again, as Emily said, a local partner there. But we did a couple of prior projects. These are just a few selected ones that are relevant to this. And so we worked with the United Way in a needs assessment of the Missoula County Substance Use Care System. In the last year, at the same time, as part of a broader project we're doing within Montana, we did an analysis of the behavioral health crisis response system. We're just wrapping up a study about individuals with lived experience in that crisis response system, which has a nice overlap in some ways with folks who have lived experience in the unhoused or experiencing homelessness. And then in some previous work we did using sort of secondary data, we looked specifically at the impact of experiencing homelessness among substance use and treatment outcomes among youth. So we have a little bit of specific knowledge around those who are experiencing homelessness, as well as in the last year or two, a lot of work specifically in Missoula County, all of which we can draw upon in this project. Some of our commitments as a firm, and then these seem to be pretty consistent with commitments in the city of Missoula, and all of the presentations we give and all the written documentation. Clearly we'll use person-first language. We want to be very aware and thoughtful of racial inequities in the system, as well as ways in which that may have been shifted over the past 10 years, as that's been a primary goal as reflected in Resolution 8533. As researchers, we always want to be super rigorous in both our design and methods and analysis. And then I'll talk about this a little bit. We want to make sure the outcomes of this are not simply a very technical, wonky document that lives in the bottom of Emily's desk, right? We want to make sure that what we learn is useful for practitioners as well as those who engage with the system. Really simply, three kind of primary project goals. What are accomplishments that have happened in the past 10 years? What are gaps and areas for continued progress? And then how can that inform the strategies that will be useful for the next stage or the next phase of this work? So primarily, we're doing a retrospective evaluation. We want to understand drivers of success and any of those barriers related to the goals of the 2012 plan. We tend to want to be efficient, and so there's already been a series of reports done. There's been a lot of stuff written that we can access. There's probably some stuff written that's not been posted publicly, but would maybe be useful for us, so that we don't reproduce things that have already been done or things that are already known. We want to try to use participatory-based research approaches, and we won't go into this too much, but really it's, are there individuals with lived experience who could work with us in conceptualizing some of the research questions? They could contribute some perspective to the design that's separate from people who will be involved in the interviews. But in some other projects we found, it helps us come up with questions we wouldn't have thought of just on our own. If this is possible, and clearly, if we don't feel like there are people to do that, no problem. And then really the goal is to see if there are overlaps or contradictions in perspectives about the system in Missoula and the shifts and changes of the last 10 years between those who provide care or work within the system and those who receive services from it. We'll do this in a couple of ways. The primary way is qualitative data. So we'll do a range of interviews with a bunch of perspectives listed here. And then we'll also do a series of focus groups with community members to see the ways in which their perspective informs kind of what's happened in the last 10 years, basically. To the degree that it's possible, we'll also want to use existing secondary data or administrative data that's collected through HMIS, or the Coordinated Entry System. In our work in Montana and other places, we are very aware that HMIS is sometimes not the most reliable data source or not the most complete data source. And so one of the early stages of the project for us is defining what's possible analytically with those data sets and then being explicit and clear about that. We got a few basic outcomes, a comprehensive sort of mapping and timeline of how things have gone over the last 10 years. That will inform a final report. And then, as I mentioned, some summary final reports that will be written at a sort of grade level that's appropriate, designed in a way that makes them engaging. And then a series of presentations, which we'll kind of work out with Emily and her team as to how to present this information in maybe community meetings or in other settings within the city that seem to make sense. So with that, here's our rough timeline for what we're working off of. We think roughly by the end of this year, we'll be able to have it all wrapped up and done and presented and moved along. So any questions? I will stop sharing that.
Does not look like we have any questions from council at this time. All right, actually, now we do. Ms. Cheryl.
I don't have any questions, and I don't know if there's any more to the presentation, but I'm happy to make the recommended motion for this. I think it's really important that we're reflecting back on what has happened in the community, and we hear a lot of anecdotal stories, and I'm kind of I know it's not all data driven and things like this, but I do feel like that's going to be really important for us to kind of have a really solid understanding of where we've come and what we can do as we try to accomplish those goals in a difficult environment, and make sure we're moving forward and using all the tools and ideas that are available to us. So I'm happy to support it, and I'm happy to make the recommended motion if we're ready to do that at this point in time.
I appreciate the motion. Quickly, before we get into further councilor comment, is there anything else in the presentation, or was that the end point?
Nope, that was all.
Okay, Ms. Anderson.
Thanks so much for that. I appreciate the what Ms. Cheryl said. I guess for Emily, I'm curious on kind of how you're going to incorporate the report that that this firm puts together, and kind of what do you see this in terms of next steps, and yeah, just kind of like walk us through kind of like, not only does this probably kind of inform how we've done, but like what we've done in our plan, but like what do we do moving forward, and how are you incorporating that, and what do you kind of see as the next steps?
Yeah, I think all of that is what we're hoping to come out of this process. I think Brandon and his team have said that they'll have some sort of a report and recommendations, and that will kind of dictate what the next steps become, whether it's to create a new strategy or a plan of some sort. We are kind of open to what seems like the best approach based on what we're finding in the evaluation. We don't want to kind of have a prescriptive endpoint without knowing what we'll learn along the way. And then, yeah, of course, whatever comes out of that, to take that in and incorporate it into all the work that we're already doing. I think, everything that we do ties to the 10-year plan. And I don't think that, the structure of what we're doing is going to shift in any drastic way, but it will be more informed by the information that we're learning and help us, I think, really clearly see gaps and really then intentionally direct our efforts into those gaps, as opposed to, what we're doing right now, which is trying to see the gaps as we're going without that kind of long-term view. We have kind of that short-sighted gaps right now. And so being able to look at the past 10 years and also understanding the landscape where we are right now will help us really intentionally target our projects and our staff time and our funding, our city and county funding, and all of the projects that we're doing towards, very clear guidance from what JG and research and evaluation discovers in the course of their evaluation process.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. I wanted to, I guess, respond, but also add to my comments that, I appreciate what Emily just said and the questions around how we incorporate this. I feel like in the last couple of years, in anything that I've been involved in, the playing field has, the earth has kind of shifted underneath us with this global pandemic, and especially with this type of work. So, being able to change course or add things or whatever it is needed. I just think that this is a really important time that we do this work and figure out how things have shifted underneath us.
And I think really valuable that the work of houselessness is very crisis oriented and reactive. And so just the simple nature of going through a process like this and letting staff and the community and participants and all of the different stakeholder groups involved, like, take a moment to reflect and breathe and pause and actually think about that is, I think, really valuable for all the work we're doing and for everyone included, even just for the sake of participating in the process, let alone what we'll hopefully learn from it.
Mr. Hess.
Thanks for the presentation. And I think this is going to be great, and I'm looking forward to seeing the results. How will you identify the individuals with lived experience that you mentioned at the beginning?
Yeah, good question. We'll use a couple of different approaches. One, we'll work with organizations who provide services to people and see if they can identify folks who they think would be articulate and feel comfortable interviewing us. And then one of the things we are nervous about is if that might produce a bias in perspectives. And so then we've begun to think through, would it be appropriate for us to say, like, be in the warming shelter for an evening or be in the Poverello Center or other locations, and just kind of sit there and see if there are people who'd be willing to talk to us who maybe aren't self-selected. And then one of the things that Emily touched upon is our ability to provide incentives to folks for their time as a way to say thank you, which in my experience often doesn't motivate people to participate in research. It just is a way to demonstrate appreciation. So those are the current strategies.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? Not seeing anything from council at the moment. Any public comment? All right, seeing no public comment, I do want to point out on the record that I am the president of the board of directors for the Missoula County United Way, but there's no conflict in this because they're not a contractor. And if there's no further comment, I would ask Rhea for a roll call.
All right. Anderson,
Yes.
Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Basika.
Yes.
There are 9 yeses, no, 0 no's. Motion is passed.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you all for your time and your presentation today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Sue. Have a good day.
All right, our next item is item 3.2, appointments to the Affordable Housing Resident Oversight Committee. My notes just say the city clerk's office. So is there anyone on the call who's going to speak to this? Gwen.
So I think I'm the only person at this meeting right now who was on the interview panel last year when we interviewed 35 people. Merita Becerra and Julie Merritt were also on that, but Merita is not available today and Julie Merritt's not on council anymore. So this is a reappointment under our new rules as we set them up in the council rules. So it's streamlined. And Will Seaburn was one of the original appointees last year. He has a great background that he brings to that committee. He is in banking and very, very involved in affordable housing finance and projects. And Emily Schenkel was a recent appointee that we had in council just a few months ago, I think, to fill an open vacancy. And she had a great background also. So I'm happy to make that nomination. I'm happy to make the motion to nominate these two to re-up.
Thank you very much for
Oh,
the
and
motion.
it looks like Emily Harris Shears is now here too also. So maybe she can speak to it also.
All right. Emily, would you like to speak to this item?
I'll just echo what Council President Jones shared around their commitment to the work of affordable housing and community engagement. And that I think that both members will be great continuing participants in this committee.
All right, thank you very much. We do have a motion. I'm seeing no other council comment. Mr. Carlino.
I was just curious if we had any insight into like the current makeup of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I know that this is reappointments, but I was just curious, like, for example, how many renters are on there or how many developers?
Ms. Harris, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a great question. So when we did the original seating last spring, we were very mindful about the makeup of the committee membership, and we've continued to do that through appointments for people when we've had vacancies this year. And so we currently have an even split of renters and owners. And then we have outlined in the ordinance the roles and membership that are required. So we require at least one representative from banking and finance, 4 community members, 2 people of the designation of community membership need to have had experience or current participation in accessing housing support. And then we also require someone from real estate and housing, someone from a housing nonprofit, and I'm trying to think if I'm forgetting any of the roles. And then we also have 3 ex officio members, which include the mayor or their appointee, the council president or their appointee, which is currently Councilmember West, and then the executive director of the Missoula Housing Authority or their appointee. And currently, the Missoula Housing Authority member, Lori Davidson, is really the only developer on the committee.
All right, thank you very much for your response. Any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none, any public comment? All right, seeing none, we do have a motion on the floor, so I would ask for a roll call vote.
Anderson,
Yes.
hang on just a minute. Okay. Carlino,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Pasika.
Yes.
The vote is 9 yes, 0 no. Motion is passed.
Perfect, and thank you all, and thank you to those who are reappointed for their continued service. We'll move on to item 3.3, fiscal year 22 neighborhood improvements grant fund awards, and Ms. Wickham.
Hello, hi council members. My name is Kalina Wickham. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the neighborhood specialist at the community or the CPDI department at the city. I've met a few of you, but I am excited to be here to be able to go over the grant awards for this fiscal year. Like I said, I've met a few of you, but I'd be happy to continue any neighborhood conversations after this one-on-one or through different ward districts to continue this excitement that we've been able to do the last 4 months. I've been able to, I'll give you kind of a little wrap up from my last 4 months so far. I've been able to have I've been able to meet with the different neighborhood councils since my start. I've met with 16 out of the 18 neighborhoods so far. A lot of them were dormant throughout the pandemic. And so it's been a really great pleasure to be able to meet all of those folks. And my focus in the next couple years is to continue the strategic assessment that was done a year ago through improving communication in the neighborhoods and engagement with different neighbors. One of the key programs that we've been able to, that we've been administering for the last couple years or many years is the Neighborhood Improvement Grant Program. This is a really wonderful way and one of our main avenues of supporting and empowering neighbors. So I'm excited to bring these projects to council for an overview and for hopeful council support of these projects. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, and can everyone see that? Yep, cool. All right, so this grant's goal is to strengthen neighborhood participation and build opportunities for neighborhood communication, neighborhood initiated projects, and problem solving. Each year, the City Council allocates funds for the neighborhood improvement grant projects. And this year we had $21,000 that we could allocate. The grant recipients are awarded up to $6,000, and these projects must be within city limits and or benefit city residents and have lasting benefits for the community. Some of the ineligible project types are on the screen here. So direct social services, direct grants or scholarships, loans or debt, business promotion, etc. So this is kind of an overview of the grant process. It starts with an identified project idea, and then we require pre-application discussions with our office, and then consultations with identified agencies and land managers within the city, so Parks and Recreation or Public Works and Mobility. And then they coordinate neighborhood support, which all culminates with a final application. Our grant committee consisted of 4 members of the leadership teams. That's Leah Morrow, Heart of Missoula, Colleen Beal from Lewis and Clark, Alex Fergario in the Miller Creek neighborhood, and then Bert Lindler from Grant Creek, and then Jennifer Savage, council member. And our timeline started on March 18th when the grant applications were submitted. We had internal grant review comments gathered from Parks and Recreation, Public Works and Mobility, Community Planning, Development and Innovation. And then the committee grant review scored these projects as well. We had our first review committee meeting on April 11th, and then a second grant review committee meeting with our final recommendation via email with unanimous support. This is an overview of our scoring that we use. And so we look at the clear articulation of the project goals and the project vision, physical improvements, demonstrated community need, benefit, and demonstrated community engagement. And then we want to look at financial support, sustainability and maintenance, and the project schedule. So we had 7 applications submitted this year, but the committee is recommending 5 for funding. So as you can see, these are the grant projects with their associated neighborhood and the requested funding along with the recommended funding. As you can see with the funding requested, if we were to fund all 7, it would cost $35,803.77. But since we only had $21,000 available, we decided to move forward with the recommended grant projects for funding. And I'll go into all of these a little in depth. As you can see, there's 2 that we recommended no funding for, and that correlates with the scoring. So as you can see, these are listed from highest to lowest, with the 3rd Street third space scoring the highest, and Barrow Pit Trail and Vermeer Park improvements scoring the lowest. So now, I will go through each of the grant projects to give a little overview. So the first project is the 3rd Street Third Space in the Riverfront neighborhood, and they requested $6,000, but the committee is recommending an award of $5,500. And so this project is to improve the safety and visual appearance of the traffic calming installation at 3rd and Myrtle with seating and planter structures. This was our highest scoring project. It was really well organized, clear benefit for the community, and the committee really loved the public gathering spaces south of the river focus. This also connects to the neighborhood greenway project priorities, but we did adjust the award to $5,500 based on committee not awarding funds for 2 of the umbrellas due to funding available. A note about this is this project will still require review and approval by the city prior to installation. In order to meet city codes for use of the right-of-way, an encroachment permit will be required, and responsible parties identified for maintenance and liability of any temporary improvements made. Staff recommends a pre-application meeting to review the proposed plans and to ensure that the activities will meet applicable standards. Awarding of the grant funds does not constitute approval of the right-of-way encroachment or proposed design included in the application. So moving on to our second project is the Northside Westside Public Art and Placemaking Project. Obviously in the Northside Westside neighborhood, they requested $5,303.77, but the committee is recommending an award of $3,800. So this project is to create community-based collaborative public art projects, specifically 1 large street mural and 3 quick build traffic circle enhancement installations through community placemaking in collaboration with local Indigenous artists. The grant will fund 1 large street mural and 1 quick build traffic circle enhancement, as 2 of the 3 traffic circles cannot be painted in 2022 due to repainting of the street. But this project, the committee thought it was very well researched, high community benefit engagement, also connects to the neighborhood greenway project priorities. So we adjusted the award to $3,800 due to not funding the other 2 circles and some refreshments. The third project is the Ningpata Park Preliminary Plan in the Fairview's Paddy Canyon neighborhood. They requested $6,000, but the committee is recommending an award of $5,300. And this project is to hire an engineering firm to create a topographic survey and preliminary design for Ningpata Park. This project is a continuation of previous community engagement work in collaboration with the Parks and Recreation Department. The committee saw this as a very high community need and lots of community engagement. It does connect to Parks and Recreation's current priorities, but the award was adjusted to $5,300 due to limited funding available. The Parks and Recreation Department has indicated that they will be able to assist with addressing this funding adjustment for the project moving forward. The fourth project is the call for street art with traffic circles in the Lewis and Clark neighborhood. The amount that was requested was $6,000. Recommended award is $5,300. And this project is to engage professional artists in the beautification of 3 quick build traffic circles by commissioning a professional artist to fully complete and paint 1 traffic circle and creating 2 artistic designs for a citizen engagement art project that will be completed during the 2022 Sunday Streets event. The committee saw this as a really great fit for the neighborhood with high community need and engagement with the connection to Sunday Streets. It also connects to the neighborhood greenway project priorities. So we adjusted the award to $5,300 due to limited funding available. The 5th project is Bonner Park upgrades in the University District. They requested $6,000, but the committee is recommending an award of $1,100. This was a 2-fold request to upgrade Bonner Park through overlaying pickleball court lines on the existing tennis courts and to hire a design firm to do a preliminary study for the addition of outdoor exercise equipment. The committee was very supportive of the pickleball painting, but due to our limited funding, the exercise equipment design was not a compelling priority for the neighborhood grant at this time. And so they adjusted the award to $1,100 to fully fund the pickleball painting, but not the preliminary design elements. Our sixth project is the Barrow Pit Trail engineering report. This was in the upper Rattlesnake neighborhood. They requested $2,000, but the committee is recommending no award. The project is to provide an engineering addendum for laying a gravel surface on the proposed Barrow Pit Trail. The committee did see this, the community need and benefit was clear. However, the project is not a high priority for transportation engineering at this moment. The project was also funded in 2010 with $3,000 of neighborhood grant funds with no movement forward. So there was concern that these funds would not be effective. So the scoring committee recommended no funding at this time. And the last project is in Vermeer Park improvements in the Miller Creek neighborhood. They requested $4,000 or $4,500. But the grant committee is recommending no award. This project is to assist with ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the park in the Invermere subdivision. The reason why the committee is recommending no award is there was no communication or support from the Miller Creek leadership team, which is a requirement in the grant. And the grant fund should also be used for improvement projects, not maintenance focused projects. But the committee did note that they would welcome future park improvement grants once the park is fully mature, but there will be no funding at this time. And so an overview again is just the grant committee is recommending funding for 5 of the 7 grant applications that were submitted with partial funding for all 5. And there is a recommended motion, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hess, looks like you were first.
Thanks. I appreciate the presentation. I know the traffic circles, the quick build traffic circles are called out in the neighborhood traffic management plan and in the Greenway project, and I'm glad to see the neighborhoods getting behind those. Do you have a list of those locations of specifically where those will go?
Yes, I do. I think the ones in the north side, west side were tentative, but let me see if I can bring those up. I think the north side, west side ones were in is it Howell? I'll have to look it up. I'm sorry, I don't have it right.
That's okay. And it's not a don't worry about looking it up now. Okay. I can connect with you later. Thanks.
All right, Ms. Cheryl.
Yeah, thanks. I love this program. I appreciate the presentation on it. I think that people living in these different neighborhoods really have a great sense of what needs to be done and what's a priority. So I love supporting it, and I don't have any questions specifically. I think that was a pretty thorough presentation, but I would be happy to make the recommended motion. I know a lot of thought went into this, and do appreciate the representatives from all around the city that took a look at this.
All right, thank you. Motion is recognized. Ms. Savage.
Oh, sorry, I actually was just going to make the motion as well. And I do appreciate all of the work that went into this. I got the opportunity to sit on this committee, and it was actually really great how thoughtful everyone was on the committee about making sure that equity was in the conversation, and that we could be able to fund multiple projects, even though some of them aren't funded fully. I think the idea was to be able to sort of spread the love a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? All right, seeing none. Any public comment? All right, hearing none. I'm excited to see Ningpata Park, that project get a little bit of funding as that inches forward. They'll shout out for Ward 4. But if there's no other comments, I would ask for a roll call vote on the motion.
Here we go. Anderson?
Yes.
Carlino?
Yes.
Hess?
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Jordan,
Yes.
Nugent,
Yes.
Savage,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Basika.
Yes.
All right, 9 yes, 0 no, motion is passed.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Wickham, for your presentation and to everybody who applied. We have no other items on our agenda, so we will be adjourned.